The colony on Arden 6 had been quiet for decades. Too quiet, some might have said, had there been anyone left to say it. It was a green world with rich soil and slow sunsets, nestled in the outer spiral where Earth's reach barely grazed the stars. They'd come here to build, to breathe, to raise children under alien skies. That was before the sky burned. Commander Alara Dorn crouched beside the scorched hull of an emergency transport, her fingers clenched tightly around a rifle she hadn't fired in years. Her knuckles were white, her breathing shallow. She looked out past the smoldering trees toward the once glittering biodome that had been home to 300 families. Now it was a glowing ruin. She hadn't seen the first strike. She'd been in the Eastern Ridge, inspecting a geological relay when the silence shattered, when orbital plasma rained down like red hail and the sky split open to disgorge black shapes, angular and humming with unnatural precision. The comms had gone down within minutes. The first wave of drones made no demands, gave no warnings. They simply killed. They called themselves the Varnak, or at least that was the word scraped from intercepted signals before everything fried. Alara hadn't seen one up close. No human had. But the aftermath was clear: scorched buildings, twisted metal, bodies left where they fell. Not scavengers. Not slavers. Something worse. Something methodical. The survivors were few. A handful of engineers, 2 medics, maybe 20 civilians scattered through the wilderness. Alara had gathered who she could and led them east, away from the colony's heart, into the edge of the preserved forest zone. It was technically off-limits, biosphere protections, old alien ruins, all that, but it offered cover, and right now that was worth more than regulations. Among the group, a boy no older than 10 clung to her leg, his cheeks streaked with soot. His mother had died 2 nights ago in an ambush. Alara had told him to stay quiet, to breathe slowly, and that he was not alone. She hadn't told him that the enemy didn't make sound when they moved. She hadn't told him about the patrol that never returned. She rose, signaling to the others. Their movement was quiet, desperate. No one asked where they were going anymore. They just followed. The trees grew denser here. Vines snaked between pillars of ancient stone, half swallowed by the earth. The ruins, if that's what they were, marked the border between what humanity had claimed and what the planet had kept for itself. Dr. Koro Yen had once warned the council not to build too close, muttering about field disruptions and decay patterns in the roots. They'd laughed him out. Now, she almost wished he was still around. At least he knew what this place might be. They reached an outcrop above the valley, just as the afternoon light began to dim. Alara dropped to a knee, scanning with binoculars. The horizon boiled faintly, columns of smoke still rising from where the Varnak torched the southern dome. Beyond it, in the direction of the water farms, more dark shapes moved. Still advancing. Still killing. The air felt wrong. Heavy, almost oily. She could smell the ash, but beneath it was something older, metallic and bitter. She glanced at her wrist pad. Still dead. No signal. Not even local diagnostics. "Commander," whispered a voice beside her. Lieutenant Marin, her only remaining soldier. She had a bad limp and a burn across one side of her face, but her eyes were sharp. "We've got movement." Alara turned. Below, in the treeline, a black shape skittered between shadows, quadrupedal, metallic limbs flashing between the trunks. A drone. Then another. No sound. No warning. She motioned for silence and dropped flat, bringing her rifle up. The civilians froze behind them. The boy pressed his face into the dirt. The first drone climbed a boulder just 50 meters away. It paused, rotating a sensor cluster toward them. Alara's finger brushed the trigger. Then it stopped. Not paused. Froze. The entire machine trembled, limbs twitching like a puppet with snapped strings. A high-pitched hum began to rise, not mechanical, but deeper. Felt more than heard. The drone collapsed with a sharp, wet snap, folding inward like crushed paper. The second drone turned and bolted into the trees. Alara didn't move. Marin swore under her breath. Nothing should have taken down a Varnak drone. Not like that. No human tech could. No projectile fired. No explosion. It was as if something inside it had simply broken. Or been ripped out. Alara scanned the treeline, her heart thudding. The trees stood silent. But the shadows felt thicker now, less like darkness and more like presence. The boy beside her whimpered. "We're moving," she said quietly.
Now.
They descended through the trees in silence. Behind them, the ruins pulsed faintly, lines of dull green light running through the stone, like veins waking after a long slumber. Alara didn't see them, but something else did. And it was listening. The mining tunnels were cold, their steel walls slick with condensation and spotted with corrosion where nature had begun to reclaim the metal. Alara moved carefully through the shadows, leading the survivors into the deep interior of the old station, each footstep echoing like a threat. The colony had decommissioned this facility years ago, citing instability in the mountain bedrock, but now it offered the only shelter not watched from above. She hadn't planned to return here. No one had. But with the drones growing bolder and the forest whispering secrets she didn't understand, it was the only option. The others trailed behind her in uneasy silence. Marin limped beside her, jaw clenched, a knife gripped tightly in her free hand. The boy, Rian, she'd learned, clung to a power cable like a lifeline, staring wide-eyed into the dark. Behind them, a half-dozen others moved in single file. Tired.
Silent.
Waiting for hope to catch up. They stopped at a collapsed support beam near a junction. Alara studied it with narrowed eyes before signaling Marin to cover her. With a grunt, she hauled a slab of twisted metal aside, revealing a narrow path beyond. Faint light shimmered from luminescent moss clinging to the pipes, casting green halos on the walls. It wasn't much, but it was enough. "We'll make camp here," she said. No fires. No lights. No voices louder than a whisper. Someone started to protest, but stopped at her look. Authority hadn't been voted on. It had crystallized around her in the silence after the screaming stopped. Alara didn't question it. She didn't have time to. As the others settled, she checked her wrist pad again.
Dead.
Still no signal, no diagnostics. It had been days. The Varnak attack had severed not just the colony's infrastructure, but its connection to every orbiting satellite, every emergency frequency. As far as Earth was concerned, they had gone dark. She wondered how long it would take for someone to notice. "Do you hear that?" Marin asked quietly. Alara turned her head. At first, there was only the rustle of movement, the hiss of condensation. Then, beneath it, something softer, like wet cloth dragged across stone. A scraping, just barely audible. It stopped the moment she strained to hear it. "I did," Alara answered. "Stay alert." Marin nodded once. No panic. No fear. Just readiness. Alara admired that about her. An hour passed. Then, two. The survivors slept in shifts. Rian curled beside her, his face peaceful for the first time in days. She brushed his hair back gently, heart aching with something she didn't have time to name. Her own daughter would have been about his age now. That thought came like a blade. Suddenly, the silence was broken. A scream, distant, echoing, ricocheted down the tunnel. Not human. Not quite. It started high and jagged and dissolved into something deeper, guttural. Alara bolted upright. Marin was already on her feet, weapon drawn. "What was that?" one of the civilians whispered. No one answered. They didn't need to. It had come from the lower levels. Alara grabbed her pack and motioned to Marin. "We check it out. Keep the group here. Lock the tunnel behind us." Marin hesitated. "If we don't come back?" Alara gave her a grim look. "Then keep moving east. There's an outpost marked on old charts, Sensor Station Theta. Abandoned, but it may have a signal relay." Marin nodded, and Alara slipped into the side shaft, weapon raised. The lower levels hadn't been maintained since the colony's early days. The lights flickered, some dead entirely. The air smelled of rust and earth, like something buried and forgotten. As she moved deeper, the temperature dropped. Her breath misted. She passed collapsed supports, burst pipes, a storage area full of shattered crates and mold-eaten supplies. Then she saw the first body, Varnak. It lay sprawled across the corridor, limbs twisted unnaturally, segmented armor cracked, and weeping dark fluid. Its head, if that's what it was, had been peeled back like a flower in bloom, revealing a black cavity lined with fibrous material. There was no blood, no sign of weapons fire, just unmaking. Alara stared. She had fought insurgents on Mars, pirates near Saturn. She had seen cruelty, seen death. But this wasn't violence. This was precision. Something had dissected this creature, like an experiment. Another shape moved ahead, quick, flickering past the light. Alara spun, rifle raised. "Show yourself." No reply. Her pulse thundered. The thing hadn't made a sound. No footfalls. No breathing. But the sense of being watched wrapped around her like a vice. Then came the whisper. Not sound. Something behind her eyes. A voice that wasn't words but impressions, flesh, intruders, memory. She staggered, blinking, shaking her head as the hallway seemed to ripple. She backed away, rifle still up. Whatever it was, it wasn't Varnak. And it wasn't human. She reached a side door and kicked it open, slamming it shut behind her and wedging a pipe into the locking mechanism. She leaned against it, gasping. The whispers faded. In the dim room, something moved in the corner. A man, disheveled, thin, eyes wide with sleepless madness. He stepped forward cautiously, raising his hands. "Don't shoot," he rasped. "I'm human. Dr. Koro Yen. You're from the colony, aren't you?" Alara stared at him, stunned. "You're alive?" He laughed hollowly.
"For now."
"But you brought them here. You all did." She lowered her weapon slightly. "You mean the Varnak?" "No," he said, eyes glittering with a feverish light. "They just opened the door. You don't understand. Arden 6 isn't just a colony. It's a prison." And something inside it just woke up. She felt the chill deepen as the shadows pressed in. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about containment. And the walls were cracking. The wind howled through the fractured mining shaft as Alara and Dr. Koro Yen emerged into the open chamber at the mountain's core. It wasn't a natural cavern. Its geometry was too deliberate, too precise. The walls were etched with glyphs that pulsed faintly, as though drawing breath. The air itself shimmered, heavy with electricity and something deeper, like static crawling beneath the skin. Every step echoed with uneasy resonance, as if the mountain were listening. Behind them, Marin and the others advanced slowly, weapons raised, their eyes darting between the alien carvings and the flickering shadows. Rian clung to Alara's side, his hand locked around her fingers, silent and alert. Koro moved with a strange familiarity, tracing lines along the glyphs as he spoke. "They called it the Deep Choir," he said, voice hollow. "It was buried here long before humans arrived. Long before the Varnak even knew this region of the galaxy. The choir isn't alive in the way we understand. It's a presence, a symphony of thought, bound to stone and memory. The colony's foundations cut too deep. The Varnak's attack was the final note. It woke up." Alara kept her weapon trained forward, unwilling to blink.
"Why now?"
"Why us?" "Because we brought chaos," Koro said.
"Fear."
"Violence. The things it feeds on." From the shadows, a low thrum began, felt first in the soles of their feet, then rising through their chests like a distant choir warming its voice. The glyphs brightened. Lines of alien script spiraled inward along the floor, converging at a central altar, an obsidian monolith pulsing with a dark rhythm. A voice erupted from behind them, mechanical and distorted. "Varnak." 3 of them stepped from the opposite tunnel, weapons raised. Their leader, a tall, plated figure with a crack across its helm, surveyed the chamber with what seemed like revulsion. "Human interlopers," it rasped, voice translated through a corrupted synthbox. "You've desecrated this place. You've invited it." Alara didn't lower her weapon. "You destroyed our colony. You killed our people." The Varnak commander narrowed its gaze. "We sought control. Dominion. We did not expect this. It motioned toward the pulsing monolith. This is older than conquest. Older than war. Koro stepped between them, arms raised. It doesn't care who started what. The choir only needed a spark. And you've both lit the fire. A second thrum pulsed, louder. The glyphs shifted, no longer just symbols but moving patterns, like thought-given form. Marin grunted, clutching her head. One of the civilians dropped to his knees, weeping. Rian clung to Alara tighter. It's inside our minds, Marin gasped. It's singing. The Varnak leader staggered, clawing at its helm. You brought it back. No, Alara said, stepping toward the monolith. But we can still end it. Koro's face twisted. You can't stop it. It isn't a creature you kill. It's a language. An infection of awareness. Once you've heard it, it never leaves. Alara raised her rifle toward the base of the monolith. Then we bury it. No, the Varnak commander growled, stepping forward. You'll awaken it fully. You'll break the seal. Alara looked around. The walls were beginning to bleed light. Shadows curled upward into the air, coalescing into vaguely humanoid shapes. Faces that flickered in and out of existence. Whispers filled the chamber now, overlapping voices of different ages, different tongues, some familiar, others impossible. They didn't speak to the ear, they bypassed it entirely, cutting into the psyche like a scalpel. Koro dropped to his knees, laughing and sobbing all at once. It remembers. It remembers everything. Marin fired into the air. The noise was deafening, briefly drowning out the voices. We have to move.
Now.
Alara made her decision. There's an old fusion core buried 2 levels beneath this chamber, she said. It powered the drill systems. We overloaded. We collapsed the mountain. Koro stared at her, horror dawning in his eyes. That won't kill it. It'll just sleep again. Good, she replied. Let it sleep another 1,000 years. The Varnak commander hesitated. And what of us? You can help, or you can die here. Either way, I'm sealing this place. A long silence followed. Then, slowly, the Varnak lowered its weapon. I will show you the access tunnel, it said. But you will not survive long once it begins to scream. Alara turned to Marin. Get the others out. Head east. Find the outpost. Take Koro and the boy. I'm not leaving you, Marin said. You are, Alara said firmly. That's an order. Marin's jaw clenched, but she nodded. As the Varnak led Alara down a narrow side path, she glanced back one last time. Rian stood there, staring at her, his expression unreadable. She smiled for him. Just a little. Just enough. They descended fast, the walls closing in around them. The choir's voice grew louder, no longer indistinct. Now it spoke in her voice, echoing regrets and buried memories. Her daughter, her failures, her fear. They reached the old fusion chamber. The Varnak stood silently as she keyed in the overload sequence, fingers shaking. You're not coming back, it said. No, Alara answered. Neither are you. The core began to hum, rising in pitch. The lights dimmed. The glyphs above flickered, then screamed. Far above, as Marin and the others emerged into the twilight air, the mountain behind them rumbled. A wave of energy, soundless, but thick as gravity, pressed outward before collapsing inward. The peak imploded, sending up a column of dust and silence. Rian turned, watching the dust rise.
He didn't cry.
He just stood there listening. In the distance, the whispers faded. For now.